Hey, Road Warriors and Care Crew. Welcome to the Care in Motion podcast, the new home for the home health clinician. We're going to talk through stories and tips around safety, efficiency, clinical issues, and career pathways, all from the perspective of a few road warriors just like yourself to provide their insight. Our goal here is that you'll find this weekly podcast helpful, relatable, and interesting, but most importantly, wildly entertaining during your daily drive. Talk about efficiency today with the Care in Motion team. I see Dan's got his thumbs up already. This is a passion project, right?
Bread and butter.
Absolutely. My jam.
We talked about, the different pillars of Care in Motion: safety, efficiency, clinical aspects, and career and compensation, and a topic that is near and dear to everyone that wants a high quality of life, work-life balance, compensation and satisfaction in home health, knows that efficiency optimization is probably one of the more important things. So here we have our expert team of home health therapists. Let's talk about efficiency. What do you guys think?
Absolutely.
What are you thinking, Dan?
I'll kick it off, I guess. So, I love the topic of efficiency because it's one of those things. So I think a lot of us get into home care. I'll say flexibility happens to be one of the biggest reasons why people get into home care. I think I mentioned recently that I've enjoyed the fact that I've been able to get my kids on the bus and go to their sporting events after school. And in the middle of the day, when I'm doing my professional job and seeing patients and working with them to help them meet their goals, I think back in the day, what I struggled with early on was, everyone, before I went into home care, I was a traveling therapist when I did my first home care job, and I was really nervous about the documentation. And I asked them, what am I getting into? I heard there's tons of documentation in home care. And they're like, there's a lot of documentation in home care, but there are ways to make it more efficient, right? So over the years, I have just learned all sorts of great tips and strategies of how to be able to, do a fantastic treatment with the patient, and making sure that by the time you leave, they feel like they've had a great treatment, but also to be able to do it very efficiently and have every single minute during that visit count. I'm talking walking in the door and having a plan. I'm sanitizing as I'm walking in, and I am getting my vital signs stuff out of the bag and having a conversation with them and killing two birds with one stone while doing all that in the first 5 minutes. So I'm not going to steal the floor. I want to, hear from everyone. But as far as efficiency goes, I think that we've all seen different practices of how people are and how people, treat. But I think that there are lots of variables that cause people to have a hard time getting out of a patient's house in a timely manner and then on to the next one. And I'm talking people that, routinely have a hard time getting out in less than an hour. And they say, and I hear a lot of people say, that's what I feel like is necessary to treat that patient. And I would beg to differ, because if everyone was going to have an hour-long treatment, we would never, ever get home. We would never get home. So I feel like we have to work really hard to figure out ways of treating the patient very effectively. And I always call it a 40-minute range. And I've never had a patient ever in my 19 years of home care call the office and say, Dan wasn't here for long enough. Never. Because why? Because they got an effective treatment. They felt cared for. So I want to hear what everyone else has to say.
But I think to build off that, Dan, I think it starts with, one, effective communication, setting clear expectations and standards, and also setting clear goals, right? So what are your personal goals? What are their personal goals? And going in and having them understand that, we're not going to build Rome in a day. This is going to take time, and I have an episode to work with you. So, every time, if they know, hey, I got 30 or 40 minutes to work hard, and the other days of the week when Dan's not here, I can work on it, that's really going to benefit. And I think the other thing that's important is taking, like I said, setting the goals and taking their perspective into consideration. If they want to be able to do the steps, all right, well, maybe that's not the first thing we do. We're going to focus on strengthening and balance and that stuff. But, maybe my third visit, we're going to do the steps. And I think that clear set standard and communication can really set the tone and help you be efficient and effective getting out of the house.
1000%. And I just want to build on that really quick. Is that we have to set that precedent and communicate that very clearly with the patient on day one. That's what I always recommend, and here's why. The patient has no idea how long we're supposed to be there, or how there's never been a mandated, right? So, but a lot of times people think, hey, if you're getting there at 9, oh, I guess he's going to be there here for an hour. They don't know what the expectation is unless we tell them. It's not their fault. So on day one, I say my average visit time is going to be around 40 minutes. That's because otherwise what happens is, during the evaluation, a lot of times they're longer visits, right? They're 45, 50, 55 minutes. They kind of assume, oh, well, this is what your visit's going to be like next time. We kind of have to have that communication made right then and there, because then it takes the awkwardness out of it in the future, especially if they're a chatter or maybe a slower moving patient, someone maybe potentially with Parkinson's. We still can find strategies of doing really effective treatments with them in 40 minutes. And just like Brendan said, we're not going to get to all 5 points of our care on day one. We're not going to do the bed mobility and transfers and strengthening and balance training on routine visit number 2, right? We hit the important parts for that day, and then we can do other things next time. I'll let Lisa talk, because I know that
I'm throwing the red flag word first, Lisa. I think it starts even before the first visit. It starts with that first phone call. There you go. No, take the stage.
So are you saying? So what are you saying? Go ahead.
I probably don't set that stage on the phone call, I will say, but in my start of care visits or my evaluations, I do the same thing Dan does. I say, visits are typically between like 35 to 45 minutes, and you set that stage so that they know. And then if they have a visit that is less, or if they have one that's more, they feel they're or valued, and they know that we have places to go. We've got other people to see. So I think that's really, really important to define those limits, right? And have those boundaries also for yourself. Yeah.
How many times have you been with a patient like midday, like I'm talking like 11 a.m. They're like, and are you done for the day? And I'm like, I'm like, no, like I've got like a, like they just don't know, and they shouldn't know. You know what I mean? Like it's, unless we tell them that we have a schedule and that we're here for a certain, amount of time, they're not going to know. So absolutely. And I think a lot of people get tripped up with that.
A lot of times they think we're the only person they're the only person that we are seeing.
Yep.
Like that's really not the case. And giving a window of arrival time, I think, is huge too.
Oh, huge.
Of saying,
what's your window that you give, Lisa?
I give a 30-minute window because I am very efficient with my time. I can plan out exactly I plan in for the unplanned events in a sense with my drive times. So I'm really good with giving a 30-minute window. And because I know if I finish my visit 5 or 10 minutes early, I just do my documentation. I just dictate it all in the car, get it done, and then move on to the next. Because I filled in that time, so I'm on time for my next person.
Speaking my language.
Efficient, but I do it different. I do a 2-hour window, but I work in a very much city community, right, environment, and I did a 2-hour window because then I have a couple people in the area. God forbid I start going somewhere or something, I need to make a switch or whatever. But I have 3 or 4 patients in that area where I know I'm going to get all my stuff done in that 2-hour window. So I kind of give them all an expectation that I could be coming any second, but I make it most efficient for myself. So then I can have that, quality of life and be able to make that work-life balance work, whatever's most efficient for my day that day. So
that makes,
how long have you been doing
inside? I wouldn't be able to do it. I would have too much, anxiety. I'm a very on-time person. So for me, that works just to be.
And I love doing that
I'm
too.
similar.
You know what I do? I just do a quick courtesy call. I have the patient's phone number right there. You know what I mean? They know when I'm coming.
Yeah, there you go.
As I'm leaving the patient before, I say, hey, I'll be there in about 10 minutes. Is it still okay to see you today? Yeah. Okay, cool. And then I'm not wasting my time if they say no.
So, yeah.
Do you ever
the best is when
because of that? If you call on your way and they say, oh, I'm not feeling well.
It's raining. Don't even worry about it.
But I think so. I think that comes to another part of being efficient, though, right? Is understanding that they're human, right? And like I think you guys just spoke to it about being shorter or longer visits. I mean, they want to get better, right? And you're gonna have those super athletic people that were maybe an Olympian when they were younger, and then you have the people that never even saw the inside of their school gym. They didn't want anything to do with it, right? So you're gonna get both people, and they're gonna have good days and bad days, but we just have to understand what their limitations are. And I think that's where we were saying setting the foundation or the groundwork is going to make you most efficient. Otherwise, you're going to be pushing somebody really hard and they don't want to do it. Or you're going to have the opposite where you're not pushing somebody hard enough. So it's like, I think part of being efficient is understanding the actual client and making sure they're individualized, they're human and not just like, hey, this is cookie cutter. And I think that's what sometimes people get worried about.
I think to all those points, I mean, so I work in an area where I have a pretty high cancellation rate, and I work with I don't know, I have a large population, a large population that I would say, I'm going to try to put this really nicely, take less accountability for their care and have less desire to get better than other areas that I've worked with. It's just as a general whole. Long story short, I think the point Lisa was trying to get to is like when I leave on a Friday and I know I'm coming back next Tuesday, I'm saying I'm writing on their calendar, I'll be here between 9 and 9:30. Cool. I won't call you unless I have a change in my schedule, and I'm going to ask that you call me if you have a change in your schedule. Otherwise, I'm not calling, and I do that for a reason, because my cancellation rate is so significant that if I call 13 minutes ahead of time and say, okay, I'm on my way, too many times it's been like, you know what? And
gives them an out.
For no really good reasons, really. I mean, we're not talking good reasons. Well, I'm a little bit tired because I went to bed at 2 a.m. You know what I mean? So we all want to do the best by our patients. We want to care for them, we want to help them. But when you've been burned so many times, like, you have to find strategies that are going to work for both the patient and the therapist. And that's what's been working well for me. Like, I don't call unless I have a change.
How do you guys? I've heard people talk about, essentially like selling the slot, right? And you said you got a 30-minute window or a 2-hour window. How do you convince them to like, here's the period of time during which we can do these, that I can see you? Like, is there like almost, I don't want to call it a sales technique, but do you feel like you're sort of, yeah,
we're the best marketers. We're some of the best marketers there are. Listen, we are going into people's homes. Like, it's not like they're coming to the doctor's office we are going into their home, which gives them a lot of opportunities for, wiggle room or outs. I don't want to take this whole conversation. I'll let someone else talk, but then I'll tell you what I'm thinking, at least.
I think you're exactly correct. I mean, you're proving yourself every time you walk in that door. And I think, going back to what we initially said, you set that standard from day one. So if you say, hey, I only work between 9 to 4, and the person's like, can I come at 5? They have to kind of work within those hours. If not, then, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes there are situations, right, where you have to reassign. Maybe another clinician does work later or something. Like, you can make that exception, but I think it's just trying to find that middle ground. And I think it's, setting that standard from day one. Hey, I'll see on Tuesdays and Thursdays at this time, writing on their calendar. And there's no exception. They know, like, hey, I'm in appointment. I'm a doctor too. I'm coming in to do this work with you. You got to keep your appointment. It's for your own benefit. And I think setting that standard and having them buy into that is really impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, I mean, so I'm 32 hours. So I tell people the last slot of my day is 1 o'clock, between 1 and 1:30. And I've been doing that now for 3-4 years. And it's never been that big, because if someone really wants to work with me, they're not going to want me to reassign them to someone who can see them an hour later. It's not that big of a deal. But the other thing is selling that 9 o'clock slot. I mean, I always say, in order to be able to get home in a timely manner, I personally have to see someone at 9 o'clock. We have to get that 9 o'clock filled. So is there an art to doing that? Absolutely. And I'll be very gentle and respectful with how I ask it, but I'll say, I'm going to be in your general area, and like, I cover this part of town between like 9 and 9:30. Will you think that'll work for you? And if they are truly dead against it, I'm going to work with them, and I'm going to try to figure it out but definitely I'm always trying to sell that 9 o'clock spot, because those who want it and love it, I'm like, oh yes, like let's go, you know?
I think that's a big thing about being efficient is scheduling, right? And looking at your territory, because I have a fairly large territory, and saying, okay, I'm in this area Mondays and Wednesdays, and I'm in this area Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you can really clump those visits together and you're not driving all over town. Because if you're driving back and forth and up and down to accommodate people's schedules, like Dan said earlier, those 10, 15, 20 minutes, they add up during the day. You're adding an extra 15 minutes here and another 10 minutes here drive time to make accommodations. Now you're home an hour later, right? That's an hour you could have been documenting, finishing up, and being done for the day.
Right.
So
And
selling those 9 a.m., saying, okay, I have a 7:30, I have an 8:30, or I have a 9. Which one works best for
Yeah.
you?
Right.
And I think it goes into knowing the patient, right? I mean, you find those people that are like, oh, I used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because I had a doc shift at 5, or whatever. But you do that on your initial evaluation, and you kind of pick up on those people that like that early shift, and you use that to your advantage. And I mean, maybe you get a group of patients that no one really likes early. You gotta sometimes twist their arm a little bit and be like, kind of compromise a little bit, be like, hey, yeah, I'll be here at 9:15, but you still show up at 9, right? Like you just get there early and kind of, So there's ways to kind of weasel your way in a little bit, as much as we not like to, but at least maybe they grow accustomed to that. And the other thing that I'll say, just overall picture wise, I know we want to be as efficient as possible, but I want to see, and I say this to patients too, I want to see you at your best, but I also want to see you at your worst. If
Yeah.
9 o'clock is your worst time in the morning and you can barely get out of bed, let me get there. Let me see what you're working with, because maybe I can help something in the morning. I don't want to see you at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you're like, running on gasoline and you feel great. Like I want to see you throughout your best time and your worst time. And sometimes that's something that I have to say to the patients, and they're like, that makes sense. You're here to help me. I'm like, yes, that's my purpose.
Surprise.
Brendan, you use the word, and it's probably semantics, and but it's part of that sales job. But you use the word appointment. I'm a doctor. This is an appointment, and how many people would negotiate and renegotiate an appointment time? So it sounds like wording is going to be important too when you're trying to get this worked out.
Oh, 100%. I think the word choice and the way that you ask it. If you ask open-ended questions, as Dan said, you're going to be there 55 minutes. You're going to be there an hour, right? If you have very direct commands / questions that are to the point, yes, no's are going to forever be in your favor. It's really going to help you get in and out of the house. And there's ways to word everything. And as you do it longer and get into phrases and things like that, I think we all get these comfortable things to say or do, and it makes you the most efficient. I mean, both in documentation sense, but then also when it comes to just speaking to individuals. And there's ways to. It's I can't think. I'm laughing because I can think of a time where I had a patient absolutely refuse being seen in the morning, and then I had no option but to see them at 9 o'clock, and I was able to convince them. Because I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, do you want therapy or not? Yeah, you do. Okay, then let's do it. And it's as simple as that. But it's the way I phrase them. Like, hey, I want to help you. I'm doing everything I can, but that's my only slot I have today, and that's what made it work.
What do you guys think about, and I think Lisa, you mentioned it, but like planning your week, right? So planning your day, planning your week, looking at looking ahead. So what are some ideas for making that work out the best?
I think we all may have a different approach to this and finding what works best for you. I mean, me specifically, I don't plan my day until the night before. And it's really because being a PT, we get admissions put on us at 4 or 5 o'clock for the next day. And I don't want to have a set schedule of, hey, I'm up here at 9 and 10, and now I got an admission who has an appointment, and I have got to go way down here and then come back up here for my previous set schedule. So I really try and plan my day the night before, usually between like 4 to 6 for me. And it usually works out pretty well. Sometimes I always say scheduling is the absolute 100% worst part of home health for me. That's just how it is. Sometimes it just does not work out. And I think that's okay. We have to be flexible being a clinician and making accommodations, but I usually try and front load my week so that I can make changes as the week goes on, or pull people up. If this person has an appointment, I can pull people up. So really, that's what I do, but it may not be the most efficient, but I don't have another choice.
I kind of do both. I'll plan ahead loosely, right? As we've been talking about from my first visit, so they kind of know what days I'm coming. But then, like you just said, Lisa, if there's an admission or something, that 2 hour window I give them, if that's far away, I try to see if I can get them early, and then I'll go back into that spot where I was. So just to give you flexibility, but just to have like a skeleton outline about what I'm doing week by week, and then also, I think it's just knowing what you just mentioned. Who can you pull forward? Who's those bench players that you can really move in a pinch, right? You might have your base of, hey, I need to see 6 people today, but I have these 4 I know, but who's my 2 extra that if I need to for productivity or something, I can pull forward. And I think it just comes about to knowing your patients, knowing who's available, who's in the similar area that you're going to be in. All those things really play into it. So.
Because there's always those patients that are like, oh, come whenever, I'm home. I'm not going anywhere. Like, just call me. So it's like having those ones in your back pocket for the when things just go wrong. Your patient went to the hospital that morning.
Get out of jail free card right there. You're like, yes, productivity.
I always thank them to the high heavens, and I always just say thank you for your flexibility. We appreciate people like you. My company has this policy where, and I actually really love it, where by Friday morning, we are telling our schedulers our approximate availability for the following Monday through Friday. Hey, I have a spot for an evaluation on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the rest of the week, whatever. So what that does is it gives them the ability to, like, early on say, okay, Dan could probably take that knee on Monday. And that kind of helps. But as far as like, sometimes you'll get these like last minute evals that happen to be like 0.01 miles from another patient, and you're like, I'm definitely going to make this work out in my favor and switch this around and call this one and say, listen, like, I'm not driving 15 minutes when I could just drive 2 seconds. So can you please be flexible and work with me here, But the other thing I was going to say is at the end of my evaluation, what I will always tell people is, if you have to cancel, give me please as much notice as humanly possible. And then I tell them why, because they don't know, and I shouldn't expect that they know. But I say, because I am responsible for filling that spot, and the more time I have to fill that spot, the more it's going to help me be able to do that efficiently. And that when they know that, it really does change the tune. So,
well, it's almost like guilt, right? It's
absolutely.
like.
Yeah, but I think everyone's speaking to it. I think establishing with them that it's a partnership. Like, I'm here to help you, but at the end of the day, you have to help yourself. At the end of I can't be here every day. I can't be here every minute. But the times that I am here, I want to do the best of my ability to be, the best to help you. And you got to do the best that you can to meet those requirements or standards.
How do you guys plan your routes? I mean, do you just sit there and play around with Google Maps, or what's the best way to look at your day and say, okay, this is going to make sense versus this one? Does it come to you from your scheduler already? So when you said that you got to call your scheduler with your availability, I was thinking they'd already have been able to see that, but are you working kind of independently of that?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
So they know the areas that I cover. So I cover a specific area. And so they'll know that when I'm looking for a new eval, it's going to be in that area. And they'll know that all these other therapists cover these areas. And so, but when it comes to figuring it out, I literally just Google Map and I'll say, all right, these 3 are on the north side of town. These 3 are on the south side of town. So I want to kind of try to make that work and figure that out. And sometimes it is the best way you can describe it is like a puzzle. You're like, okay, this is not going to work out over here. We have to do this. Now I got to call this one and try to make it work. And it's just the way that it is. And is there an art to it? Sure. Does it get messy sometimes? Absolutely. Does it get to the point where you want to put your head through a window? Sometimes, because there's sometimes you just can't control it all, but you do the best you can. And on those days that work out like amazingly, you're like, thank you. You know?
Yeah, so we use home care home base, which I think a lot of clinicians use, and it has your schedule, your patients per day, and if you long click it, it pulls up a map and it places a little dot on the map of where your patients are. So I can see, here's a bunch up here, one's way down there. I'm going to see how I can clump the most people together before I move on. I tend to like to go as far as away as I can and work my way back to my house. Or seeing the closest patient I have to my house and then go as far and work my way back in, because we don't get paid mileage from our house to our first patient. So if you get a patient close to your house, I'm getting now more mileage in a sense versus what I would have gotten before. But like Dan said, I mean, sometimes it works amazing. Like on this last Sunday, I texted all my patients, "Hey, I'm planning to come at this time," and they all responded, "Okay." I was done in 5 minutes. It was the best feeling in the world. I wanted to go enter the lottery.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then I have days where everything seems amazing and I've got it all planned out in my head, and you start making the phone calls and one person's, "Well, I got a doctor's appointment." It's like, well, crap.
Yeah.
So then you go,
And then the next one has a doctor's appointment, and then the third one.
And then the third one was hospitalized. And then the fourth one's not home.
yeah.
And then the fifth one's going with a family member somewhere. You're like, huh? Are you homebound?
Well, I know. Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
No. I got nothing smart to say right now.
I know one of our efficiency topics, a big one, obviously, was going to be talking a little bit about documentation and documentation best practices and how to keep yourself free from staying up till midnight or working weekends to get, play catch up. But since we're running out of time, and since it's probably its own entire episode, I think we can save that maybe for next time. Anybody got like last thoughts on maybe the one best thing that somebody listening can do tomorrow a little bit differently to help out?
I would start with just saying, be true to yourself. Know what you are capable of. Know what's important to you, as far as what time you're working everything, and be firm. Because at the end of the day, you're not doing anything wrong. What you bring to the table is very valuable, but your time is valuable, and you have to honor that yourself. And I think a lot of times that gets lost in the mumbo jumbo of the days of the week that we go through.
Yeah.
Good closing words, Brendan. Very
Well
nice.
Very inspirational.
I like that.
I'm
I
ready
want to put that on a
wall.
t-shirt, maybe. Like that whole phrase right on a t-shirt. That was good.
It might pick up a lot.
You'd have a lot of people like leaning into your chest, squinting, Dan.
Multiple sentences.
Oh, any final thoughts? All right. Well, this has been great. A lot of experience, a lot of great ideas, a lot of fun. Love talking to you guys about this today, and I mean, can't wait for the riveting, next discussion of documentation, which I know is everyone's favorite topic. So until next time, thanks for joining the Care Motion podcast, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Be efficient.